Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to Raising Excellence, the teaser edition. I'm Michael, the MC and opportunity ambassador for today's show. Today's show's title is Are You Living a Myth?
Are
Probably.
you?
With me today are my favorite co host, Agnieszka, the psychosomatic illuminator,
Nice to be here.
and Dennis, our freedom facilitator.
Greetings and blessed love.
Oh, I'm glad Dennis moved his camera because I was worried I was going to have to say something.
See there. So, what's the myth of your life?
I don't know. I
Well,
learned a lot from myths. You, Michael?
that's it is really a good question because I do feel like there's a lot of things that we hold as beliefs, and it really is something that we need to examine. And I think there's a lot of things that we've been told over our lives that we kind of adopt because it just kind of feels good, and it may be completely wrong, and that's definitely something that I've definitely
I think it's
experienced.
like Cinderella. You know the myth of Cinderella, where she was given an impossible task. She had to separate the peas from the poppy seeds, and the stepmother mixed a bag of peas and a bag of poppy seeds in one, and it was supposed to take her all night. I think that's what our listeners have to do now with separating the myths that are true myths from all the crap, you know? It's as if it was half little rocks and half actual myths that can give us power and information about how to live our lives. Because, I mean, I guess maybe I should back up. I believe that mythology, the stories of our society, are actually contain all the knowledge and wisdom that we need to live our lives well.
And if you said the word believe, Michael, a while ago, so that kind of reminds me of religion. So there's those myths at the basis of religions that we're exposed to a large or a smaller degree, depending on which one. Um, and at the bottom, it's really the question is really what does it mean? So there are these stories, and have you really thought about what they actually mean, what they stand for? Because these stories, like they are behind, or those myths are, you know, you find them in a religious context. We find them on TV. Last week we mentioned Netflix a lot, so that's full of those myths. And where can we find them in our own lives as well? Is are our beliefs, are our perspectives also based on myths? And where's the difference between a myth and science? Because some of what was called scientific or scientific theories in the past are today rather recognized as also beliefs or myths or mere possibilities, and the other way around as well. So I
I
think it's an
think it
important question.
changes. I think it can go back and forth. Like something is science, then it's myth, then it's science, then it's myth. I mean, we've seen that throughout history, right? Even garlic. Garlic's one of those things where it's science and it's myth and it's science and it's myth. Because right now, again, garlic is a powerful antibacterial. So it's science these days.
Well, and I think some of the greatest myths are things like fiat currency and the fact that people
You had to
believe
bring
them.
that up.
They,
It's
they're,
not
they
that kind of show, man. It's not
well,
that kind of
but
show.
that's a big one because it leads to a lot of other myths because like a lot of things that people think are valuable are actually not, and it's just because somebody's giving them something that they believe is valuable that they think it's valuable.
And then what about
That's
all
that's.
those? Sorry, sorry, we
Go
finished
ahead.
there. The origin of humanity, of the world, there's a lot of really interesting stuff out there about that. Did it originate here? And earlier you mentioned the Big Bang, or is it um, like Darwin said, or is it like Erich von Däniken says? And has there been outside influences, or is it are the religious texts actually not myths but true to the dot? And how shall we interpret them? There's a lot of things to say and to unveil about myths, isn't it?
But I think for this show, the most important things about myths that we need to examine are how myths play a role in our day to day. Because this Raising Excellence is all about psychology, practical psychology, things you can implement in your life right away to fix and better yourself, your life. And so I think that it's really important to look at the side of myths that actually teaches us the wisdom of the ages and decipher that wisdom and maybe even differentiate that wisdom from what's happening in Hollywood these days and in other, movies, Netflix, whatever. All these movies seem to be taking these original, really deep and very evocative myths and flattening them to some kind of a pancake, and then it no longer carries the power of the myth that is behind it.
Well, maybe they're just adapting them to our current attention span.
Right, but our current attention span is not going to get us a true understanding of reality in our society and our place within it.
Yeah.
You know, that's just going to be fake living in a video game. You want to live in a video game?
So is that what myths are about? To really tell you what's going on, really? Or
I
are they
think
there to
so.
distract you from it?
So many times in my adult life, I've been like, oh, that's exactly how that story said, or oh, you have to remember this. You know what I mean? There are so many times when I use my knowledge of myths for day to day survival.
Or are myths then also there to actually highlight or point out that, some things actually cannot be known, to the scientific, cognitive mind alone? And that would, connect nicely to what we talked about last week, that there are different centers and different ways of, I don't even want to say understanding or of knowing. There's a understanding, like a mind, a cognitive function, and then there's, like a place in your heart, and then there's a place down. We talked about intention last week, to a large extent. So there's a knowing that is beyond just um, the brain understanding. So maybe myths actually are, are hinting at, or are like pointing, or like ringing the bells and saying, hey, look, there's something that you can learn and that you can study, but there's also something mythical, something that's beyond that, and it's actually supposed to be like that. Maybe they're just pointing at that.
I would say two things. One, people in general will accept a comfortable lie over a difficult truth. And two, in regard to like the modern media and what is being repeated, we do have to examine like what is the myths that they're feeding us, or what are the stories they're feeding us, and how, like because like for example, superheroes these days are really kind of the modern mythology. Why do we have to have like 300 of those movies,
I
like
know
every
why.
year?
I can tell you why. Because in ancient myths and legends, it wasn't necessarily about a superhero, it was about a regular guy. And often that regular guy went away against society, against mainstream, and took his own path in order to achieve the end of his journey. But these days, they're making it so it's like, oh no, you're not a superhero, so you can't possibly take an epic hero's journey. You better stay in your little apartment and don't leave the house because 8 p.m. Mommy said you have to come home at 8 p.m. So that's what we're doing. You're gonna stay home after 8,
Actually,
and
right
and
here,
then
sorry.
watch these superheroes over on TV. Sorry, go ahead, Des.
Actually, right here, the government spent a few millions, not too long ago, on on bringing out the idea, or promoting the idea that you'll be a hero if you stay at home and eat fast food and don't do anything. And that's not even a joke. I mean, they really spend millions on this propaganda thing, telling people you're a hero if you stay at home and eat nachos and don't do anything. Be a hero of today. So if that's not, is that a myth or is that a myth buster?
Yeah. So how is that you living your life? How is that you taking your own journey? How is that you delving into the depths of your heart? Oh no, no, there's an illness. You can't possibly be on a spiritual journeys these days. You better stay home and eat nachos and watch Netflix or the flattened myths.
Well, it's kind of along the lines of the Matrix and that idea that you're a battery and you just sit in your pod and generate the electricity that we need for the system. And don't do anything else. Is that the new myth?
I don't know, but it's pretty scary.
It's pretty close to the truth, unfortunately, that people are headed down. So like if they're adapting that as their rational explanation for what they're doing, to some degree, that is the myth that's being created, right?
You know, we shouldn't be talking about this today.
Hmm.
This is for Wednesday.
Okay.
We're getting too deep. This is a teaser. It's
Well,
already been a
it's
few minutes.
we're trying to define the problem, and I think it is something that we're witnessing in a lot of people, and we've got to. I think it's certainly something to talk about. But yes, we only have 10 minutes, and I think we probably used those 10 minutes up. So
Yeah.
with that said, we're going to adjourn towards the Wednesday show, which will be approximately 4:35 p.m.
And we're talking
Central.
more about these myths on Wednesday, so don't think it. You're
Because
still gonna get more.
if you're living in a myth, you probably would want to know, right?
Well,
And it's
you will
not
find out
exactly.
on
I-
Wednesday.
I'm gonna clue them in.
No.
You are living a myth.
Now you've done it.
No. Tell me more
No.
Wednesday.
Prove me wrong.
But what
Prove me
about my
wrong.
reality? I have a reality I'm attached to. Is my reality not real?
How do you mean?
Hmm,
You don't see this?
scary.
Must be
Yeah,
real.
it's physical. I can feel it. It's real.
All right. We'll see you on
All right.
Wednesday.
See you on
Yes.
Wednesday.
Bye bye. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everybody.